This video gives you some suggestions for giving effective feedback to your writers. First, each paper must be read by a minimum of 2 editors. As this chart indicates, you could have 2 editors edit 2 writers' papers, and then the other 2 editors would be in charge of editing the 2 other writers' papers. In this example, Anne might be editor 1 for Liz's paper, and Jim would be editor 2 for Liz, while Jim would be editor 1 for Emily, and then Anne would be editor 2. Chances are editor 1 is going to have a little bit more work to do on the paper, so you want to make sure that you rotate this. Both editors' comments should appear on one document. Editor 1 can go into Blackboard, open up Discussion Board, and save the file that the writer has submitted. Then open that in Word and make comments. Once he or she has finished making comments, save the file and then email that or somehow get it to Editor 2. Editor 2 will then open that file, make additional comments, look at Editor 1's comments, make sure there's no contradictions, and then save the file, and then Editor 2 will post that file with both sets of comments on Discussion Board. And so when the deadline says feedback is due by Tuesday, October 7th, that means both sets of comments are posted and are included in that file. Again, just a reminder to make sure that the structure of submissions and feedback is very clear on Discussion Board. Please make sure that you use the subject line, Submission 1, Feedback 1, Submission 2, Feedback 2. That's going to be very important for you as writers and editors. It's going to be very important to me when I'm grading this as to determine if things are submitted on time. Just a reminder on how to go about reading a paper. Peter Elbow, he's a theorist in composition, he challenges us to read as a believer. Read the entire paper, identifying the strengths of the writing, the strengths of the arguments. Why do you want to believe what this author is saying? Make marginal notations indicating what is working and why. And then at the bottom of the paper, write 2 or 3 statements indicating the overall strengths, what this writer should try to continue doing in other places of the paper. Once you've read through the paper as a believer, go back and reread the paper multiple times so that you can offer suggestions to the writer as to how to improve his or her writing. Make sure that your feedback is specific. Avoid one-word responses. Instead of confusing, explain. How does this paragraph connect to your thesis, or this contradicts your conclusions about theme in the previous paragraph? Be aware of your tone when you're giving feedback. They've done research to show that short responses are often read as harsh responses or angry responses or snippy responses. You pick your adjective. You don't have to gush in your feedback, but just take a minute and read through your feedback and see how you would interpret it if you received those same comments. Make sure your stylistic comments are not just a battle of style. You'll see here in this example, all the way through, the editor was changing little words that really were stylistic words. It wasn't that the author was using something incorrect. It was just the editor had a personal preference of style. And there are going to be multiple styles. If it's impeding understanding, if it becomes problematic, then draw those things to the writer's attention. At the end of the paper, give the writer a sense of how far he or she needs to go in order to make this paper publishable. And I'll say right here, you could read that first draft and say, other than a couple grammatical changes or a revision of a sentence or two, you know what, this paper is publishable. You absolutely have that right, and I hope that happens a lot. But if you think that the author has some more work to do, give him a general indication. Focus on the 2 or 3 macro concerns for the paper and let them know how significant those are. Again, keeping your tone neutral. And then you might look at 2 or 3 minor issues to consider that impact the overall strength of the paper. I strongly suggest that you use track changes as you're giving feedback and comments. The example that I have here is from Microsoft Word's 2007 version. If you have an earlier version, then you will access the track changes options under the menu option Insert. And I believe, but don't quote me on that, I don't have access to it anymore to double check. I've highlighted 3 areas that you're going to want to know. First of all, the Review tab is where you access the Track Changes functions. You'll need to click on the Track Changes bar button to turn it on, and then you'll see here they've inserted the word lion, the editors, and so that shows in red. I've also circled the insert comment or the new comment button. You click on that and it will set up a comment just like I've shown here. I've also circled other one which says accept. Now writers, if you're going through and you're reading their feedback and you accept that change of, oh yeah, I forgot the word lion, just go ahead and click accept, and then that will be incorporated into your original text and it won't stand out as red anymore. One other thing I will show you where it says final showing changes. If you click on that drop down menu, you can change it to the final not showing the changes or the original text itself. And so track changes are going to be very valuable for you as you're working with both editors and working with the writer. I would suggest that you save each file as a new name, so it might be submission 1, editor feedback, submission 1, editor feedback 2, submission 2, just so that you don't start running into, oh, which file is this, have I read this, etc. Be charitable as you're giving feedback to one another. Make sure that you're giving the kind of feedback that you want to receive, because you're in both positions. Remember, you're an editor and you're a writer. So think about what is working for you with your editorial boards as writers and what you can give to your writers as an editorial board. As always, let me know if you have questions and we'll talk about that as on an individual basis.